2020 has been a really interesting year to say the least, but it's had some good games. In fact, 3 of them have been some of the most anticipated games: Doom Eternal, Final Fantasy VII Remake, and today's review, Cyberpunk 2077. The game entered pre-production in 2016 and is based on Mike Pondsmith's Cyberpunk tabletop role-playing game, and Pondsmith has been a consultant for this game since 2012. So I guess the game has been in pre-production for 4 years, before actually going into production for 4. If you plan on getting this on PC like I did, you may notice that the download stops at 57.4 gigs. It's not frozen, it's installing, and it took my machine about an hour to install. Load times are kinda long sometimes not. It's kinda weird. At least for me, which is something I'm not used to. So if I'm saying it's a long load time, you may need to beef up your machine. I have 32 gigs of RAM with a Ryzen 2700. The game is fantastic looking though. Night City looks real and reminds me of the megacities from Judge Dredd, especially the 2012 Dredd movie. The lower income areas of the city look dirty and grimy, the upper class areas look really nice and pristine, and having an RTX 2080 Ti and running it at 1440p at high settings with ray tracing on really feels like it's pushing my PC to perform. More so than Control did. In first person I'd get around 60 frames a second, but in third person when driving around I would mostly get probably 60 frames a second, but there were times that it would drop down. And I do wonder if it's just the high graphical fidelity that causes the frame rate drops, or if the game needs some under the hood tweaking to improve optimization. From what I've heard from a lot of people, it seems to be the latter, because I had Doom Eternal run way better, and that has a lot of particle effects, and particle effects can pretty much bog down anything. And there's also a lot of nudity in this game, so I'm not sure how much I'm able to show, because there's advertisements that have exposed breasts all over the place, and there's at least one store that's filled, and I mean it is filled with massive dildos. It's almost comical with how much sex there is in this game. The sound design is really good too, and so is the voice act. I love Keanu Reeves' character Johnny Silverhand. He does a really good job here and isn't like any character Keanu Reeves has done before. Well, maybe John Wick, but Silverhand is a great character. I didn't like the Jackie Wells character. Every time I was dragged into a job with him, I would ask myself, when is this character gonna die so I could be rid of him? He reminded me a lot of that character Enrique from King of the Hill, with just the way he acted and personality. And the thing is, Enrique in that show was meant to be an annoying character, and it feels like they did the same thing here with Jackie Wells. I had a really hard time with the character creator, because the game kept glitching and automatically scrolling back up to the top for all the options in the creation menu. So I really couldn't dive as deep as I wanted to for the character creation. And I wish I could show you some of it, but YouTube would strike this down so fast because your character is naked. Although I don't think character creation really matters that much in this game, because it's 99.9% in the first person, and mirrors have to be activated so you can see your character. And you do have to activate a third person camera for driving. You're given 3 backgrounds of which to choose from: Nomad, Street Kid, or Corpo. Choose either one and it doesn't really matter. I chose Street Kid, but there was 2 people in a Discord group that I'm part of chose Nomad and Corpo, and the 3 of us only noticed that our prologues were the only thing that was different. Act 1 and Act 2 were the same. There were times where you get different dialogue options, but your dialogue options don't really seem to matter as the game's main story really wants to keep you on the path that it's set. This is the first CD Projekt Red game that I've ever played. I have all the Witcher games, but I'm not really interested in them right now. The game functions very much like your standard open world RPG. You have the main story and then there's side quests. This feels like it functions more of a refined Fallout 4, which is actually saying something given the state this was released in. The main story quests will award more experience than street cred, and side quests will reward more street cred and money than experience. And you need street cred and a lot of money if you want to have all the cyberware like the Mantis Blades. However, a lot of the cybernetic enhancements have ridiculous street cred and cost a lot of money. So when you're able to see what you get from NPCs called Ripper Docs, start planning accordingly. But Street Cred will give you discounts, and there is a Ripper Doc that you could blackmail for even more of a discount. You shouldn't have an issue with the main story quests. They're easy as you'll pick up very powerful weapons and loads of health pickups. The challenge is in the side quests, where some of them require the right equipment to take on or more of a puzzle based than combat. One quest called Small Man Big Mouth. I got it very early on and it was practically impossible to do as all the guards could one or two shot you. No matter what level I was at, either it be level 8 or level 21, but after doing a bunch of quests, I got a very powerful sniper rifle as a reward. So I got onto the roof of a building across the street and picked them all off as they had horrible accuracy if you were outside their fenced area where they were. Brain dances are an interesting type of puzzle. Basically, you're going around someone's actual memory and analyzing certain parts of it to find out where you need to go. And there's some type of hacking puzzles that feel more luck-based because of the combinations are randomized. However, there's really no penalty for failing. You just back out and try again for what is essentially a different bingo card. While the amount of time you've had left doesn't reset, it won't start the countdown again until you click on a choice, allowing you to plan it for max payout. Combat is done with guns, melee weapons, stealth, or brawling. I mostly stuck with guns and stealth. Some places are easier to stealth than others, but with the right hacking tools, you can distract enemies or employ damage over time effects on them. You do get a slew of tools to tackle on any situation, in almost any way that you want, except for diplomacy, which is something that I tend to do in RPGs, like Fallout 4. I had such high charisma at the start that I didn't really have to kill anyone, and you could go through this game without killing anyone as well, like knocking them out and hiding their body, which in practical terms, knocking them out is like killing them, so it's kind of the same thing and doesn't really matter at that point. Hacking enemies in the game to cause damage over time or to screw around their cybernetics, I didn't really use that much in the beginning because it didn't feel that fluid, but also you're not given a lot of RAM to do it with. But towards the latter half of the game, about when I was 30 hours in, I actually did start to use it quite a bit because I had some pretty powerful damaging effects. But it also doesn't really feel that fluid because you first have to go into scan mode, then you have to scan them, select the hack, and then go and do it. Granted, this was probably done for console players because if this was a purely PC game, you would have been able to map them to number keys, so this way you just needed to get them in your crosshairs and then initiate the hack. I wonder if there's going to be some kind of mod for that. It would actually be pretty cool if they did. Give it a bit of an MMO feel, I guess. Driving in the first person is really disorientating, especially in a car because there's a lot of stuff in the car that obstructs your vision. A motorcycle isn't that bad, but the third-person camera for vehicles likes to reset itself every couple of seconds to do what I call the dumb angle because it'll focus right on the rear of the car or bike, obstructing your vision for what's in front of you. As you're playing the game and doing quests, it can feel like your choices or options for quest progression is limited, but it's a lot of under the hood stuff that's going on when it comes to your choices. You don't see them right away like you would in other RPGs. There's blue and yellow dialogue options. Blue is dialogue that'll give you more background information. Most of it is for lore purposes. Yellow dialogue options allow the quest to keep going. However, when given multiple yellow options, it doesn't feel like it matters, and it doesn't really branch the quest for different results. But again, it's stuff that's going on under the hood, so you're really not going to be able to see the change on the outside. Another choice that I would have liked to have had is the option to not have any cybernetic enhancements, because the game does force 2 of them on you, because you kinda already have them. One of them's an eye implant, and one of them is a hand modification. But I would have liked the option to have equipment to replace those things, and have it all correspond with weight, like have being 100% human be something of a hard mode type of thing, because there's times where you have to jack into things to control them. It would have been really cool to have this man versus machine type of thing going on, because if you have no cybernetics, it would be a lot harder to do these things. But that's just something I would have liked to see. Night City is incredibly huge. I'm not sure how big the game world is, but it's probably one of the biggest that I've ever played, and No Man's Sky does not count. The crafting system is alright. You'll get a lot of crafting materials because you'll be picking up lots, and I mean lots of weapons that you can disassemble into parts for materials. I've picked up more guns and clothes and armor pieces, and some of the clothing lasted me for several hours of playtime. I picked up an armored bodysuit early in the game, like a few hours in, and I didn't replace it until maybe 30 hours in because I was able to keep upgrading it. And the gear that you get is better broken down into components than sold off to vendors, as vendors will give you pennies. And if you want those cyberware upgrades, you're going to have to hack a lot of terminals, pick up a lot of euro dollars, and do a lot of side gigs to get them. Story-wise, it's not all that original, especially if you've watched a lot of dystopian sci-fi movies like I have, especially the ones from the 80s and 90s. To me, it's nothing that I haven't seen before, especially since the story has a mix of a lot of story ideas from different movies. But it should keep you invested in it as it has with me. There are things that I would like to explore in the world of Night City, like why some people have no faces, looking more machine than human. It makes me wonder who would do that to themselves, or how they have cybernetics that are exposed but look shoddily done and the flesh bulges around in nasty ways. Romance options are pretty limited. There's only 4 characters and you need to have a certain body or voice type to start a relationship with them. There are 3 other characters, but you're only going to manage a one-night stand with them. If it wasn't for the whole relic being a major part of the story, I think there could have been some really cool branching pathways. Like doing something for Pan Am, a nomad. She offers you to go with her and her people. While the game doesn't allow you to do so because of the main story, her questline was very fulfilling and could have been a neat end to the game. Or you could tell her that you'll think about it and return to it later, because I was on the Judy romance path, and it would have been nice to take her with me with the nomads because she had planned on leaving the city if it wasn't for me romancing her. It would have been cool to tell her about the nomads, and then you could both join them and the game ends there. That'll probably be my own little headcanon if I want it to be. But unfortunately, the relic story doesn't allow you to do that, and it's forced upon you, kinda ruining it for me because considering there's so many options that could have been taken, granted there are choices that you'll make that'll change your epilogue, and that I'm asking for way too much. But all these characters really made me enjoy their stories, not the story of V. I've run into a few bugs while playing the game. It did crash on me the first time I died and tried reloading to a checkpoint. I've seen some characters take a second or two to load in, but it was pretty rare. And there was some texture popping. Some dialogue things tended to repeat themselves. I had to reload the game once because the game couldn't continue a quest. There was a sequence where I played as Johnny Silverhand and the music that was playing got stuck on a 3-second loop, which ruined dialogue for the story section, as I could not hear it, so I had to reload the game to make it stop. But the most frequent bug was picking up junk instead of things like weapons, money, or crafting items. Even with the reticule smack dab on the item that I wanted, but instead it would pick up all the items around it first. I never bought into the hype for Cyberpunk 2077. In fact, I think I only heard about the game some point this year, and I got what I paid for, a pretty decent cyberpunk themed RPG. Although I played it on PC, not console, which is where like 90% of the controversy is. This is not a revolutionary game at all. In fact, I don't think any game could be considered revolutionary nowadays. And if you go in with tempered expectations, you'll have a good time. But stay away from the PS4 and Xbox One versions of the game. They have too many problems and from what I hear are practically unplayable. A friend of mine has the base PS4 model and says that the game runs incredibly poorly, and that he's waiting for some stability patches before he plays any further. I spent most of my time doing side quests, as it made me feel like I was a citizen of the city just going about my life as a mercenary. In that aspect, it's a neat cyberpunk themed simulator. The genre, not the tabletop game this one's based on. But my rating and review come with a massive asterisk that you should play it on PC. And if you have to play it on console, apparently the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X seem to be the best options because the PS4 and Xbox One have the poorest performance. But they seem to be fixing and patching that out. But hey, at least the glitch compilations have been funny.